Hey guys, CVH here with BetweenTheLanes.net, and today's video is going to be another deck tech. For today's deck tech, as you can see on the screen, we have an Aggro Mage deck, which means intelligence and willpower, so blue and yellow, for those of you who don't know the terms quite yet. And Mage is the basically the combination of the two. It's the class built by the two attributes, and so this deck is going to be a little bit different than the previous deck tech. Speaking of, I'll be trying to do probably a deck tech a week or something along those lines. But this one will be different than the blue-purple deck, sorcerer, ward, sort of control deck that you might have seen a few days ago, in that it is a very budget-friendly deck, and also capable of being played at Legend. I have to give some credit to Erlex, whose this build is loosely based upon. I saw his list on legendsdecks.com, initially wanted to try it out because I saw it and was like, okay, this deck can perform at high Legend. I didn't have everything for it. I made some budget replacements, I edited things after the fact, which made it a little bit farther from his build, including the Brutal Ashlanders that I'll talk about in a minute, a little bit less emphasis on the actions that he had. So these things actually wound up working pretty well for me. I just wanted to give you a general idea of how I'm building the deck. In case anyone wants to try it out, this is a fine deck to start with on the ladder if you're just buying a few packs or just completed the story mode and you want to build something that can either help you win the quests by playing Constructed, or you just want to climb some ranks, potentially hit Legend. This peaked for me at about Legend, I think it was still Legend 7 that I peaked at with this deck. I had some wins and some losses, but I definitely do think that if it performs reasonably well at high Legend, it has to be able to get you through the non-legend ranks up towards Legend, at the very least in a reasonably fast manner, because as you can see the deck curves out at 5 Magicka, and that's just Piercing Javelin, so games are going to be pretty short if you win them, and if not, then they might be like basically lost early. Deck doesn't have a lot of reach, like a red deck would maybe have more reach, but you have like some burn spells, that's about it. No charge, guys, in general. So I will be talking about each card. Let's just start at the lower end of the curve. 2 lesser wards. I think before I really talk about the tiny spells, I should talk about the tiny actions rather. I should talk about why we're playing them in the first place. We have Crystal Tower Crafter, which exponentially gets larger, sort of like Murkwater Savage, except instead of playing a green dude, you just have to play any action. This card is one of the key cards of the deck. Thankfully, it's a common for those budget players out there. It's definitely the thing you want to be playing as early as possible so it can get out of control quickly. Also, we do have 2 copies of Shimmerine Peddler, which is the only epic in the deck. Originally I saw the build that ran 3. This deck I did take out some of the actions, and we are also running Shrieking Harpy, so 2 has been fine for me. You don't always get the effect off, but it is something that is scary for your opponent, right? Because they know if it sits for a turn, you're much more likely to get double actions on the following turn. So let's go back down to the cheap actions. We have the 2 lesser warriors, just help with trades, and they mostly just make your otherwise pretty vulnerable creatures actually resilient. Like, you might play a Slaughterfish spawning, but one of them winds up in not the shadow lane, and if they have a guy out there, it's very likely they're just going to kill your 1/1 Slaughterfish before it becomes a 3/1 or a 5/1 or just kills them. Putting lesser ward on that, often just a fine way to mitigate that while potentially buffing your Crystal Tower Crafter or getting a card draw off the Shimmerine. Ashlander I did add because I felt like I was getting a lot of hands with actions, but not a whole lot of action, as in I could play things that weren't creatures, but I still couldn't pressure the board early, and it's an aggro deck, so we're not really great at getting the board back. There's no big sweepers, you know, we have to just hit them early with our creatures, because once they stabilize in the late game, we might lose if we don't have just the necessary reach, like the Lightning Bolt just to go face. So we added the Ashlander, it's been pretty good so far. It's a really hard card to deal with easily, and it also synergizes very well with the Soul Splits, of which there are 2. Sacrifice a creature to summon a 3/2, so you're not only getting the value, but you're only sacrificing a 1/1, and you're also dealing 3 damage, which could potentially kill an important creature, or at the very least deal some face damage, which this deck actually wants to do. So it's not like more of a mid-range later game deck that you don't really want to go face with this. It's not the worst in this deck. Sometimes it's even what you need to do to have lethal. We have Execute and Firebolt as the tiny removal options, basically. And basically self-explanatory there. We don't always need to play these removal options in an aggro deck, but since we have so many spells, synergistic cards that I already mentioned, they're very good. Just to get those benefits off and clear potential threats. Like if you do this on a Lurking Mummy, it's just insane, right? We know how good those cards are. Scouting Patrol, similarly good with the spell synergy cards. It's also just a 2/2 value on turn 1, and yeah, not much to say about it. You really want to be playing it in an aggressive yellow deck. Aggressive willpower deck, excuse me. Talked about the Tower Crafter, it's great. High Rock Summoner is less great on curve, but this is one of the few ways we can actually like play something beefy in the deck. There really isn't a whole lot of stuff that you want to be playing. Well, you don't really want the game to be going too long, But at the worst, this synergizes well with the Soul Split, like I mentioned, you know, turning a 1/1 into 2 3/2s. You know, also Royal Sage, you know, it's just another body to put out there that potentially gets a keyword. But basically, if you do make it to turn 5 and you're top decking, this can actually, like, if you got like a Frost Etronach or the 6-drop, like, it can give you some power to just push through in that very late game, because they're not really expecting you to play something that's actually large and threatening. They're just expecting you to play a bunch of little guys, and they might have wasted removal on a Crystal Tower Crafter that got out of hand or something. So this card could give you the extra threat you need. It's still in testing, but I think it's pretty solid in the deck. Ice Spike, it's a spell, it cycles late game, and it deals 2 damage. It's pretty good in the deck. Shimmering Peddler, we already talked about. It's the only real card draw. It's the only card that says you're drawing a card besides the Ice Spike. We also have the Telvanni Arcanist and Cunning Ally, which kind of give you extra cards, right? In a way. Just not from the top of your deck, and they're kind of unreliable in their own ways. Shrieking Harpy was another addition. I took out some of the spells for some of the actions, rather. You know, made it a little less action heavy. Shrieking Harpy, just a solid 2. Good in the mirror matches. If you're up against another aggro deck, also another one of those cards, of which there are basically just removal and this, and the lesser wards that can help you protect something really weak like a Slaughterfish spawning and allow it to get out of hand. Can also lock, just because you're locking down like a threat that would attack over like a Slaughterfish or attack over the Crystal Tower Crafter or the Shimmering, something you need to stick for a turn to get value. This card can help you get that, because, you know, it's an aggro deck, but it still wants to get value. You gotta use your cards smartly, and you can't just, you know, play something out there, watch it die, and then, you know, never get any value out of it. You're gonna try to get the max value, but it just all happens so quickly, and you need something that helps ensure that, like Shrieking Harpy. Soul Split, there was 3 in the original list that I saw, and it would probably make sense as a 3-drop as well here, since the Ashlander is also just one of the best possible things to use this on. Only 2, just mostly a space issue. We don't want to go up at 50 at all, obviously, but yeah, I mean, I'm not really sure. After testing, there could be something to cut for the 3rd one, but, you know, it makes a lot of sense in this deck. It's a good card. It gives you 2 3/2s. You can attack with something in the Shadow Lane when your opponent already has a creature in the Shadow Lane, and then Soul Split it, and it'll give you something in the other lane, and the one in the Shadow Lane will, since it just came into the board, will get a cover as well. So it's a way to ensure maybe 3 extra damage if they don't have a removal action, or some way to deal damage to it from their hand. Crushing Blow, it's a good action. It deals face damage and gets rid of some threats when you're trying to fight for the board early. Cunning Ally, it trades fine, and we have, I think, 34, if I remember correctly. There's something around 34. I could just count on the screen, but that would take a while. I think it's 34 actual intelligence cards, 34 blue cards in the deck, so we're most likely going to be able to get a Firebolt off this, which can be valuable with all the spell synergies, obviously, and just help you clear things off the board. A lot of times you really do need the extra Firebolt just to kill like a 4/4 or something like that, you know, so they don't counter trade on their next turn. Eastmarch Crusader, this is replacing, what was in the original list? I forget the name of it. It's a 3-drop, 1/4 that I actually don't have, so I tried this as a budget replacement, but it's been very, very good so far. I believe, oh yeah, the Artaeum Savant. So I like this card, especially if you're going like a more spell-heavy route, but I do think the Eastmarch is one of the best cards in yellow for an aggro deck, considering, you know, this is also like one of those situational draw cards, like the, you know, it's like the Shimmering in a way. So if we've broken a rune, which is unlikely by turn 3, but much more likely on any subsequent turn, we're more than likely just, you know, just going to get some card draw. It's a 4/2, it's not the most durable thing. Like the 1/4 just sits there and gets your board out of hand ideally, but this is just quick, easy card draw. It also deals 4 to the face immediately, so you don't really have to have other synergies in your hand, other actions or anything to make it hit hard. It already hits pretty hard when it gets in there for 4. But sometimes you just need something to filter late game to find your Lightning Bolt, your Crushing Ally for your removal, or your Crushing Blow, or Cunning Ally, anything, basically. Slaughterfish spawning, it deals a ton of damage on a, you know, pretty fast clock if they can't deal with the Slaughterfishes right away. Unfortunately, they're pretty easy to trade into, but we have a lot of tiny ways to get rid of things and lesser ward to protect them. Elixiring into this on turn 2 is very powerful. All of a sudden you're hitting them for 6 the following turn, and if you have a way to protect it on your actual turn 3, or you can even elixir into a Lightning Bolt on the following turn, then they're going to be hitting for 10 the next turn, 5/1s apiece. It's just, it gets out of hand really quickly. Late in game, it's not a great draw, because more than likely they're going to have a way to deal 1 damage. There's a lot of things like that around, like, you don't really want to be playing cards that are weak to Skaven, the fire card that deals, or excuse me, the red card that deals 1 to everything, but cards like that are just going to be beating when you play Slaughterfish spawning late in the game, and you have to just hopefully get it early so you can get out of hand, right? A lot of these cards are not good late in the game, but early in the game, they can win you the game basically, almost by themselves, it seems, if you just have the proper support in your hand. Telvanni Arcanist, another one of the ways you can get an additional removal or additional burn in your hand. 3-drop, 3-2, not fantastic, but it's not bad at all. One of the best 3-drops we could be playing in these colors, at least. You kind of have to play it, right? A lot of the actions you can get are inexpensive. It's rare to get an expensive one, really, so you're usually not too disappointed with what you get. You can get like a curse or something random. I think that one of the weakest ones is actually on the board right now, Healing Potion. It's one of the ones you almost never use. You're like Imprison. There are some bad ones, but like if you look through and you actually, you know, see what's going on, you can get a lot of really powerful ones as well. You can even get a, what is it called? Imperial Reinforcements or Divine, wait, you can't get that as support. You can get like Imperial Reinforcements or Warcry, that's the one that buffs everything by +2/+0. Your cards that you don't really want to add slots into your deck to include, but you really don't mind getting it off a random effect like this. Lightning Bolt, obviously fantastic removal, we play it, and it's also fantastic to go face. Some of our only prophecies, really. Piercing Javelin, basically the same deal except it can't go face. It's not really a card we particularly want to be playing from our hand a whole lot, but, you know, if they play a guard that's really in the way on turn 5, you know, chances are the game's going to turn 5 at least. And Royal Sage is the last card in the deck. It was something I play over the Paladin in the original list because there were more spells in the original list, and I just think this is a much more valuable effect for an aggro deck than Drain. I mean, Drain is great in the mirror, but so is getting like guards and potentially lethals and drains off your Royal Sage. This can also just give your guys charge, which can represent even more face damage. Ward is fantastic, obviously, if you're making any sort of trades or trying to protect your Slaughterfish spawnings. I do think Royal Sage is great in the deck. You're almost always ahead on life if you have a reasonable shot to win by like turn 4 or turn 5 when you're probably playing this card. So, yeah, I do think it's a good inclusion. That's basically the entire deck. Basically, you're trying to mulligan for your 2s and Brutal Ashland or Scouting Patrol. If you're up against something that looks like it's going to be playing something early, you want like Firebolt Execute. Based upon what you have already, it's possibly worth it to keep, you know, Crushing Blow, Soul Split. You could keep these cards, potentially Slaughterfish if you're on the Elixir and already have an early play, or any 3-drop can be basically substituted in that sentence right there. You can, you know, if you have a 2 or a 1 and you have the Elixir, set yourself up for a really powerful curve early. You know, you don't really care about using your elixirs late in the game. You're just trying to get out there, get fast. Try not to spend too many resources on destroying other creatures, but sometimes you have to just to ensure that your creatures get extra damage in, or to protect your very valuable guys like the Crystal Tower Crafter. So that's basically it. I think this is probably one of the better aggressive decks to play on the ladder. It's not really too inconsistent. You just have to draw the creatures. You're not relying on items or anything. So I encourage you all to give it a shot. If you're looking for something quick or something in these attributes to play, let me know how it goes, and stay tuned for future content. See you next time.